Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are doing well this morning. It's Makeda Valletta. In case you don't know me, I know a lot of you do. I'm live on my Instagram, but I will save this. I will repost it on YouTube. And I would give a formal, like the same introduction I always give, but it's going to be a little bit different today. Okay, I'm actually in school myself, and this is like my finals week, and I have been in a tunnel of school, of sleeping, doing schoolwork until I pass out, waking up and back in the books. Okay, and I've been trying to stay focused, and I couldn't help but to be distracted by these student protests, and I have a lot to say. Okay, I couldn't find my microphone, so hopefully you guys can hear me okay. But just to give you a background, okay, on me, so it can set up the context for what I'm about to talk about. So I was born and raised in New York City, in Harlem, where Columbia University is located. A lot of people don't know that Columbia University is in Harlem, New York. I grew up on the campus. My mom worked at Columbia University growing up. She worked at Columbia University my entire life, and she still works at Columbia University. Hold on a minute. I'm going to take down notes of people on my block when this is over. Hold on. Let me write this down. People writing ignorant, disrespectful comments, you're definitely getting blocked when this is over. So let me write you down. Okay, got it. Anyhow, so my mom was, when I was born, she was a secretary at Columbia at the business school. But then she became a union organizer, and she worked her way up and became a top union organizer, very successful, very well known in the world of labor. And she is currently retired, but she still counsels the presidents of other unions, and also counsels and has involvement at Columbia University in Barnard. Now, I grew up on picket lines. I grew up at protests. Okay, my mother was excellent at organizing those, but they were always centered around labor. And so I grew up watching my mom organize and hearing those conversations. My brother and I, we would be at her office making signs for strikes. Okay, I know how hard that work is, and my mother was successful with the strikes that she organized. Right. My dad, on the other hand, is a former civil rights person. Okay, he was heavily involved in the movement. He was in the front lines. Okay, he was a part of an organization called RAM, which is Revolutionary Action Movement, which is an organization that strategically put the Black Panthers together. Okay, they preceded the Black Panthers, and my dad was one of the founders of the first freestanding Afro-American Studies department, which was at UMass Amherst. Okay, Dr. J was his student. Natalie Cole was his student. My uncle is still at UMass. And both of my parents were professors, even though they don't have degrees. Okay, my mother was a labor studies professor at Cornell, and my dad, he was at UMass before I was born, when he was in his 20s. But then, since I've been living, he taught at LIU in Brooklyn. So anyhow, and then I have a twin brother. Okay, and he graduated with a master's in journalism from Columbia in 2019. Okay. Yeah, so my brother graduated with a master's in journalism in 2019, and I was a student at Columbia. I went there for graduate school as well. My first graduate program was at Columbia. I didn't finish it. I did like 1.5 years of a 3-year program in physiology and nutrition education, right? So Columbia has been my stomping grounds my entire life. Okay, even like right now I'm in Chicago. I'll be back in New York after my graduation. Okay, so I'll be back in New York the day of Columbia's graduation, and I don't know what will be going on then, but I definitely will go peep the scene. Also, for those of you who don't know, City College is 20 blocks away from Columbia University. Okay, in Harlem. So anyhow, with that being said, when I first started, I'm going to say that almost everything epic starts in New York, okay? Um, when I first, started seeing, first of all, okay, and the thing is, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to get certain people in trouble, but I will say that being around my mom, okay, I hear her conversations, and like I said, she's always been involved with Colombia. This is like a few months ago. This might have been in the fall. This might have been like November or something like that, or October. She had, it was an employee in her union, and I heard my mother talking to her and talking about it. She had an employee, a young girl, she might have been like 26. She had a good job, she had good benefits, because members of my mom's union have very good benefits and all that secure stuff. Columbia employee, she quit. And she, the reason why she quit, she was talking about this war. She was talking about the situation in Israel and Gaza, right? And that's what made her quit her job. And something about the energy on the campus, right? She was really upset. It sounded like my mom said that she was arguing with coworkers, but then when the girl quit, she was upset about faculty, and I just know it had to do with this. And I found it strange that she was quitting her job because of, what was going on in Israel and Gaza. And the girl was like 26. She was walking away from a job where you can't find jobs with those kind of benefits and pay. It's very hard, okay? And my mother negotiated for her. My mom, because the girl said that she had like mental health issues and she was depressed because of it. So my mom negotiated for her to still have her health insurance for like 4 or 5 months after her job ended, so she could keep getting her mental health treatment. And I remember hearing this and I found it strange, right? So fast forward, okay, to, let's say, the past few days when I've become aware of all of these protests. Now, like I said, I grew up on Columbia's campus, entrenched in that, okay? I grew up on picket lines at Columbia and Barnard, making signs, all of that, my whole childhood, okay? I have pictures of it, all right? And then in Chicago, I live right by Northwestern, okay? Northwestern University and Loyola University. I live between those two, okay? But anyhow, I know that Columbia has a long history of protest. And another thing I heard my mom talk about, I think this was last year, she was talking about the younger members of the union, how they didn't want to listen to the older people. Now, my mom is in her 70s, and there are other people involved there are other people that she works with that have been around since I was a kid. So they probably too are in their 70s, okay? And so they're still there. And then you have the younger generation who's in their 20s and 30s, and there's often a clash. Because I hear my mom constantly talking about how the younger ones don't want to listen. There's been issues in the union with that, right? And I think that older people can learn from young people and vice versa, right? But in terms of strategy, one thing I remember my mother saying, okay, last year, I can't remember what it was, but there was something that the union wanted to protest over or something. I can't remember. I should ask my mom, but okay. Hopefully you can hear me again. Somebody called me. Let me know if you don't hear me. Or let me know if you can hear me. If you can hear me, put a 1 in the chat. So I remember hearing my mother talk about, again, if you can hear me, put a 1 in the chat. But I remember my mom talking about how, in terms of strategy, there was something that the young union members wanted to protest about last year. And I think it might have been kind of intersecting with graduation. And my mother, I can't remember what it was, but whatever they wanted to do was very disruptive. And it was also, I think, going to possibly disrupt part of graduation. And I remember my mom saying that wasn't a smart strategy. She was saying that you don't want to upset, administration, or, if you're trying to negotiate, these were workers, not students, right? Workers in the union. If you're trying to negotiate something with the institution, okay, you don't want to completely get on their bad side. And my mom gave an example of, it might have been a strike or something that happened some years ago. It was in the 90s, she told me. It was I think it was 97. There was some type of strike or something they had organized at Columbia and Barnard. And she said that the day the graduation happened, the union was out there, but they were outside the campus, okay? They had it was before the ceremony. They had like donuts and coffee for parents. They were greeting parents, and it won. And a lot of the students even joined them, right? And then when graduation started, they packed up and they moved, but they weren't disrupting graduation or anything like that. So again, Columbia University is my stomping grounds, okay? That was my backyard growing up. I was on that campus practically every day. And even now when I'm in New York, I'm always by that campus, okay? And, you know, like I was just at graduation a few years ago when my brother graduated, right? And so now I'm looking at this. When I first hear them saying that the students were being violent at Columbia and that they were threatening the Jewish students, I didn't believe that, okay? Because first of all, I'm just going to say the temperament in New York, New York has the largest population of Jews outside of Israel. And I grew up with a lot of Jewish friends, okay? And I grew up in Manhattan. In case you don't know, Harlem is in Manhattan. A lot of my friends growing up were half Jewish, half black. I mean, I had a lot of Jewish friends. And they were all, none of them were religious Jews, okay? And I remember one of my childhood best friends, who's still one of my good friends to this day, but I haven't spoken to her about this because, like I said, I'm also in school and highly stressed trying to finish the last I need to finish so I can graduate in 2 weeks, okay? But my childhood best friend, she was Jamaican and Jewish, right? And I remember growing up, she always said she had a Jewish stepfather, but then she had a Jewish biological father. And her biological father was a religious Jew. Her stepfather was not, okay? Most of the Jews in Manhattan that I grew up around, they're extreme intellectuals, but they're not religious. So I remember growing up, she used to always say she didn't get along with her biological dad because he was a Zionist. And my best friend was totally against that. She was totally appalled and against Zionists, and she was not that. And the Jews that I grew up with in New York weren't, okay? When I started going to Brooklyn, all right, I remember going to Crown Heights. I had a cousin in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, and it was like a totally different atmosphere. Because as soon as I got off the train in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, on one side of the street, you would see all Jewish people. On the other side of the street, it would be all black people. And literally, the Jews did not cross over to the black side, and the blacks did not cross over to the Jewish side. Now, granted, the Jews in Brooklyn are a different group of Jews than the ones in Manhattan. And even in Brooklyn, there's different groups of Jews. Now, I'm not an expert in all the different groups. My dad will say, oh, this is this kind, this is that kind. He knows the difference. I don't know all of that. I just know there's different sects of Jews. Even in Brooklyn, amongst the religious Jews who are very isolated, okay? But in Crown Heights, and then the blacks in Crown Heights were Caribbean, okay? I'm American, so in Harlem, it's mostly black Americans. So it's different groups of blacks, different groups of Jews, right? But in Brooklyn, they couldn't get along. I remember, I think it was the 90s, they were like trying to kill each other in Brooklyn, okay? And then you go back and look at, I remember it, but when you go back and look at it on YouTube, you see police cars flipped upside down, like pure chaos. Jews and blacks in Brooklyn fighting, couldn't get along. But what I remember is a lot of that coming from the Jewish side, right? But it was a huge separation, and being from Manhattan, that was like foreign to me. But even within Brooklyn, you have the Jews in some of you may not know Brooklyn, but the Jews in Flatbush and the Jews in Crown Heights, okay, don't agree with the Jews in Williamsburg, okay? Now, the Jews in Williamsburg are against Israel, okay? The Jews in Williamsburg are total, they're not Zionists at all, okay? They don't believe that Israel should be a state. And let me just tell you another thing about me. I wasn't raised religious, okay? I was not raised religious. I was not raised in church. I never went to Bible study, okay? My dad told me, believe what makes sense to you. Do your own research and believe what makes sense to you. He always said, I don't care who tells you anything, okay? Because I remember I had a Puerto Rican nanny at one point. And you know, Hispanics can be very Catholic and praying to Jesus and saints and whatever. And I remember I had a Puerto Rican nanny one time, and she had said to me something about, she was lecturing me about praying to Jesus, or I don't know, something about praying and God. And my dad heard her. And when she was done, my dad said, listen, do what makes sense to you. I don't care if your grandmother tells you, I don't care who it is, if it doesn't make sense to you. And so when I was a kid, I went to church, and my dad was an atheist, but he said, I'm not telling you to be an atheist. You just believe what makes sense to you. No religion was pushed on me. And I grew up around, really, I went to New York City public schools. I went to excellent schools. They were very mixed ethnically and socioeconomically. But nobody that I went to school with talked about religion. Okay, I went to school with Jews, Muslims, Christians, atheists, but religion was not in anybody's face, right? We didn't have religious conversations. So for me, when people start talking about what they're arguing about, and this one believes that if like there are Christians in America, millions of them who are also Zionists, and they think that, my dad was explaining this to me the other day, they think that if the Jews don't convert to Christianity, by the time Jesus comes back, there's going to be an Armageddon. All that stuff is ridiculous to me. When people start talking all this biblical stuff, they lose me, because I don't regard the Bible as some important book. I don't regard it as, people act like it's the instruction manual that came with the earth. To me, it's a book of stories, and people use it as just some factual text, and there's whole wars and people killing each other over some shit in the Bible. I think it's completely idiotic. So let me just say that. But I just wanted to say that all the Jews, New York is a very Jewish city, but not all Jews agree, okay? And I grew up around people who were Jewish and half Jewish who were completely anti-Zionist, all right? Now, Columbia University has a peaceful energy. So when I first started hearing that the students who were protesting for Palestine, that they were harassing the Jewish students and yelling at them, and I didn't believe that, okay? I still don't believe it. Now, and when I was talking to my mom about it, she didn't believe it either, because we all know Columbia and the whole energy and the students, right? But I'm like, if that's happening, where's the videos? Now, I can't speak for other schools, but I did see at UCLA, they were like having a whole war, but that was because the pro-Israel people, okay, came and started throwing things at them, and that's how that happened. But at Columbia, I was like, I need to see video proof that there were students that were harassing Jewish students. I need to see some screenshots of the text message. Now, for me, I like to take a neutral stance because I have a science background, right? My mom, she's a labor organizer. My twin brother, he's in his journalism thing. My dad is also a journalist. And I feel like I could be a journalist, right? But for me being a science person, I like to get facts, okay? I don't like to just make assumptions unless they are educated guesses. Like, this is what they say in science. You make educated guesses after looking at the facts. So I like to deal with facts, okay? And I like to see evidence. And I like to what is it? Activate critical thinking. So that's number one. So now again, I'm trying to stay focused so I have my own schoolwork to do right now. That's why I don't even know how these students have time for this, because I'm like, I could barely have time to eat right now because I'm trying to finish my work. But I looked at some interviews on YouTube, right, of students. First of all, I was surprised to see that all these schools have female presidents, all of them. MIT has a female president. University of Pennsylvania did, that stepped down. Of course, Harvard had Claudine Gay, who stepped down, female president. Columbia University has a female president. I was like really surprised to see all these female presidents, but it's fitting because females have top-notch brains. I'm just going to say that. But anyhow, so I'm looking at something on YouTube, and I saw it was a video. It was a student from University of Pennsylvania, MIT, and NYU, right? And these were all Jewish students. And they were giving details about harassment and issues that was happening on their campus. And I thought, because, okay, I'm just going to say hold on, wait. There's so many things I need to say. Hold on, before I do that, I'm going to say that, okay, my dad, another thing I forgot to say about him, my dad was a journalist. When I was growing up, my dad wrote op-ed columns. He wasn't a reporter, he wrote his opinion for the New York Daily News, for the Village Voice, for the Manchester Guardian of London, Emerge Magazine. He had a radio show in New York. He used to be on TV, on roundtables all the time. And I remember growing up, always hearing my dad say that you can't say anything against Israel, okay? As a journalist, he always knew that, okay? And it's a bias that a lot of people have been aware of. And the reason why my dad got sort of blacklisted is because he eventually said something that had to do with Israel. I remember when I was a young, I was just out of college, okay? Might have been 24, and I had a Jewish client. But he was a very religious Jew from New Jersey. And me and him were cool. And one day, we were having a conversation about something. All I know is that I said to him that Jews run the media. And he got so offended. Like, he got mad, like as if I wished death on them or something. And I don't see why that's insulting, because if somebody said black athletes run the NFL or the NBA, and they do. That's a fact. What am I going to get offended about? He got really mad when I said Jews were in the media, and they do. I witnessed it growing up, right? And also, back in, I think it was the 90s, there was something going on with blacks and Jews on Harvard's campus, and Henry Louis Gates called my dad to come to Harvard's campus to give us a talk about blacks and Jews, because there was a big issue happening on Harvard's campus back then. It was about to be a riot. And my dad came to speak about it, got a standing ovation, had Jewish people in the audience, because my dad always talks about how complex even the issue between blacks and Jews are. When the whole thing was happening with Kanye last year, and the dude from the basketball player from the Nets, I forget his name, making the Jewish comments with the documentary. I wanted my dad, because last year me and him were doing some videos together talking about different topics, and I wanted to do a video about blacks and Jews. And my dad was really preparing for it because he felt like it's such a complicated issue. I need to have all my facts straight, and he's like an extreme intellectual, and we never got around to the video, right? But I just know that, like I'm just saying outright, I grew up around Jews, always had Jewish friends, not, but, and not all Jews agree, and wrong is wrong, and I'm going to call it out, whether amongst any group of people. So, okay, with that being said, I'm looking at this video on YouTube with the UPenn student, the Columbia student, and MIT. No, it was NYU, UPenn, and MIT, right? And when these students were explaining about the type of harassment and things that were happening, I felt like, well, that's wrong. Even though it's hard for me to picture that, especially at institutions like MIT and UPenn, NYU, it's hard for me to believe that, okay? Because you're dealing with highly educated people, a lot of times, very liberalish kind of people. So I have a hard time believing it, but I'm like, if this is happening, if this is really happening, why is there no video evidence of this? Why are there no screenshots? Because one student said that, one of their Jewish friends' information got leaked online, or maybe it happened to them and they were getting death threats. But I saw no receipts. In 2024, you can show screenshots, pictures of things that have happened, videos. I didn't see it, okay? But I'm like, if that's happening, that's crazy, right? And in listening, then I saw the video where Congress was grilling the president of Harvard, Claudine Gay, when she was still there, UPenn, and I think Harvard. And it was strange because they were questioning them, asking them, is the call for, I think the question was, is the call for the genocide of all Jews or the death of all Jews or something like that, is that considered, hate speech, or is that, no, she said, does that violate your code of conduct? And each president struggled with that question, and they were humming and hawing, and then they all said, well, it depends on if it's directed at an individual. They were like, if it's directed at an individual, and if it's persistent, then yes. And the congresswoman went down the line with each of them individually, and I found that strange that they just couldn't say, yes, that's against their code of conduct, or yes, it was wrong, because it was. Like, I don't think that anybody should admit. It's one thing to be pro-Palestine and you want this stuff to end, and you want them to stop attacking them. That's righteous and valid. But if you say that you're calling for the death of all Jews, or I feel like that's not appropriate, and that's hateful, especially in a college campus. But none of them would say that, okay? So that was kind of surprising to me, just to know, because I like to be fair and look at both sides. But one of the presidents, the president of MIT or Penn, I was looking this up last night. One of them is Jewish, actually. Is it a president of Harvard? It's the president of one of those schools, because I was looking this up last night. She was a woman. She's actually Jewish. So then we see the NYPD. Okay, we see now the people that broke into that building at Columbia's campus. The people that broke into the building at Columbia's campus and broke the windows and trashed the building, to me, that's not a good tactic. Okay. You're in college currently. Where are you in college at? Okay, so to me, that's not a good tactic. And I actually wanted to talk to my mom about it yesterday, because my mom, like I said, she's a superb organizer, all right? But my mom's in Detroit right now, because she works for the UAW, okay, the United Auto Workers, which, even though she doesn't represent auto workers, the unions at Columbia and Barnard are Union Theological Seminary. They are on the UAW, okay? And I see UAW signs out there. And that's my mom. My mom is heavily involved at Columbia. So I called her, but she's in Detroit. She's in Detroit for work, and she's like in a work tunnel, so she wasn't really completely aware of what was going on. Like she sent me a picture before the cops came and, you know, did what they did at Columbia. She had sent me a photo of all of them. Okay, somebody asked, what's the point of the protest? So the point of the protest is to get Columbia University to divest from, I think, companies who are doing business with Israel. Israeli companies, okay, or companies who are involved with Israel. And the United States is playing a huge role with funding a lot of, you know, the weapons or whatever Israel is using against Palestinians, right? So that's what the protests are about. I see, you know, professors. There are professors who are supporting them at Columbia. Okay, I just saw something that I posted from Joyanne Reed's page, as professor of Arab Studies. Okay, who supported them and talked about, because another thing my mom talked about, because I said my mother, she's always been organizing stuff. But when I was a kid in the 90s, my mom got arrested for, there was somebody named Amadou Diallo, okay, that the NYPD, he was an African man that the NYPD, they beyond assaulted him. They like had stuck like a broomstick up his butt and just tortured the man. And there were protests about that then. My mother got arrested being at those protests. And my mom told me when I was talking to her yesterday, you know, she said that when she first came to Columbia, they were protesting about South Africa and getting the university to divest from companies that were involved with South Africa. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so my mom remembers that, right? Now, I didn't even remember that. I do know that Mandela came to Harlem when I was a kid, and my parents brought me there. Okay, so I remember when Mandela got out of jail, one of his first visits was Harlem, New York City, and my parents took me there. Okay, so I grew up in this kind of environment, right? My mother was just in South Africa a few years ago with Mandela's ex-wife, and like, so I just grew up in that, right? So, my mom remembered that when she first came to Columbia, they were protesting about Columbia divesting in South Africa. I didn't even know about that. One of my friends first told me about this, and apparently it worked. Like a lot of universities did do that. Also, you know, my dad being heavily involved in the civil rights movement and being a part of an organization called RAM, which is Revolutionary Action Movement, my dad knew Malcolm X very well. He was at over 100 of his speeches, okay? He was supposed to be with Malcolm the day he was assassinated 5 blocks away from where I grew up. My dad was not a part of, he was not a part of the Nation of Islam, but he was definitely, you know, a supporter of Malcolm, looked up to him. But one thing that my dad told me, you know, in his older years that he realized, he said back then, because my dad's from Florida, St. Augustine, Florida, he said back then, first of all, Florida Negroes weren't nonviolent, okay? Like, they were the ones in the South that wouldn't cooperate with that. But he also said that my dad left the South. My dad was, when the student sit-in started, now that I'm talking about this, more and more points are coming up to my head. When the student sit-in started in 1960, my dad was a freshman in college, okay? So he was at Florida A&M. He actually got kicked out of Florida A&M for his involvement. And he realizes now, it's like, it's because of the money the schools get, He was at an HBCU, and being involved in these student sit-ins was a no-no because of whatever money they get from the state or whatever. My dad ended up dropping out of college and moving to Philly. My dad felt like if I stay in the South, I'm either going to get killed or I'm going to kill a cracker. Okay, so he went to Philly and didn't go back down South for 25 years. Okay, he was a black radical. He ran with some of the most wanted people in the FBI's list. The freaking FBI would come to his house every other weekend. That whole COINTEL stuff, my dad was a part of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, he has trauma from that whole time. So, but one thing that my dad pointed out in his older years, he said, Martin Luther King was the real brave one. Because Martin stayed in the South. And when people hear, like the nonviolent protests, like Malcolm X used to talk smack about these Southern leaders, which pissed them off. Okay, when Malcolm came down South, these Southern leaders, they cornered him because of the stuff that he was talking as if they were docile and stuff. When my dad said, first of all, Martin was armed. Okay, all black people in the South were armed, and especially the preachers. My dad made the point that the Nation of Islam never raised a gun to the Klan, okay? But Southern preachers did. And that Martin and his people, they were always armed. It just wasn't at the protest. That was strategic for them to have nonviolent protests because they wanted the pictures captured. If black people started to fight back against the dogs being sicked on them and hoses and everything that was happening, if the black people had started to fight back, you would have pictures of black people attacking people. Nobody would know that, oh, they were attacked first. Okay, you could tell whatever story you want to tell. They said that the photos are worth 1,000 words, probably 1 million. So if they had pictures of black people, black students attacking the white cops or white people, they could change the narrative. So it was strategic as to why Martin wanted it to be nonviolent. Okay. Now, my mother, she grew up in the North, okay? She grew up in Pennsylvania, in a small town outside of Pittsburgh, close to Ohio. And my mother was in high school, okay, when this stuff was happening. My dad was a grown, man, and my mom was in high school when these pictures came out in the paper, okay, down South, of dogs being sicked on black people, and all of that, right? My mom said she was horrified and shocked. Like, they knew that it was bad down South. They knew that it was, I guess, worse down South. But there was no social media. The media wasn't going to show you that. So when my mom said when they saw those photos, they were absolutely shocked and appalled. If you think about it, and Pennsylvania has a lot of Klan, okay? There's a lot of racists, a lot of Klan in Pennsylvania, but still, it wasn't as bad as the South. And that's one thing that my dad always said. He said, I don't care how bad people said it was in the North, the South was a different beast. And those crackers will kill you. And if you think about it, Martin Luther King got killed in the South by who? Malcolm got killed in Harlem in front of his kids by other black people. Okay? So, and then you see Emmett Till, who people could talk about how racist Chicago was. Chicago has, even though I love the city now, okay, love it, love it, love it, okay? Haven't had any racist experiences since I've been here. But talking to, my Chicago friends who are very well versed in their history, you have a different view of Chicago when you talk to Chicago natives, especially black ones, versus people who moved to the city, okay, in the past 10 years. But Chicago does have a very racist history, and, one of the fiercest ones. But still, Emmett Till went from Chicago to Memphis, or Mississippi, okay, and look what happened to him. Okay, so I'm just saying, just the example of that North and South, like how the South was really a different beast. And my dad said Malcolm couldn't shoot, okay? He couldn't shoot. He never took, but he's saying all this, and now you have Martin, who could shoot. All his people had guns. They never left the South. And my dad in his older years realized that those are the real brave ones. He was the real brave one. And change happened because of that strategy. So I see a lot of younger people now. When I say younger, I mean people in their 50s, people, let's say 60 and younger, okay? There's a lot of younger people now who just clown Martin. They act like he was just a simp, like he didn't do anything. Oh, I could never be nonviolent. I would never do that. Blah 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 blah. And then they talk so much about Malcolm as if like that was the way. And then they talk about how nothing has changed. Okay, they talk about nothing has changed. Bullshit. Okay, the people who say nothing has changed are the people who do nothing, and most people do nothing. Okay, as a person who grew up around organizers, grew up around people who be on the front lines, grew up around people, you know, like that live, eat, and sleep this. This is what I grew up around. Okay, even when Colin Kaepernick stopped singing the national anthem and, you know, took a knee, and I grew up around that. Nobody in my family ever stood up and put their heart in their chest to salute the flag and sing the national anthem. Okay, I have a different view about the flag now because I'm definitely an American more than anybody, more than any white person. My bloodline has been here, right? But the national anthem is an extremely racist song, written by that Keys guy. That bridge that collapsed in Baltimore is named after the man who wrote the Star Spangled Banner, which was written in Maryland. Okay. And this, if you know the history of the song, it's an extremely racist song. I will never sing that song, and no black person should be required to. And when you take a stance like that, you're going to be punished. You're going to be excommunicated. You know, that's how it works. Okay, so I didn't feel sorry for Colin Kaepernick because that's what happens. That's what happens when you stand up for shit. Okay. That's why, like, I would have a lot more money in life if I could just go along with the okie doke. But I'm not built like that. I don't come from that. I'm not cut from that cloth. Nobody in my family is like that. We would all have way more money if we could be like that. And that's why people look up to billionaires. Like, my mom is so against billionaires being mayor or being president, anything like that. Okay? And when you think about it, everybody, like all these black people who be so obsessed and loving billionaires. Oh, Kanye's a billionaire, and Jay-Z's a billionaire, and Diddy's a billionaire. To me, most people who become billionaires did some fucked up shit to become one. So I don't look up to billionaires. Like, I look up to people who are doing the work, people who are highly intelligent. You don't have to be freaking highly intelligent or smart to become a billionaire, but you could be selling your soul. You could just sell your soul to become a billionaire. Okay, so anyhow. Going back to the topic, okay. I felt like, you know, busting into that building and ransacking it's like, okay, I was with you to me, it seemed very peaceful and nonviolent until I saw that. Now, the NYPD, I saw a conference with the NYPD, and they have said that there were outside agitators. People are claiming that there are outside agitators who came in and were doing that. But they didn't have, when they were asked about numbers and stuff, they didn't have that information. So I guess we have to still wait to see if that's actually true or not, because there's conflicting things. Some people, because there was a student, a Columbia journalism student, who the journalism building looks over, you know, the yard where they were having the protest, and she stayed in the building because they weren't letting people on campus. So some of them just slept in the building so they could see what was going on. And she said that she saw a lot of students that were in that building, right? A lot of Columbia students. So I don't know if there was, but then other people were like, the way that they barricaded themselves in the building and used zip ties, that only professionals know how to do that. So some people swear that they're professional agitators. Now, I don't know if that's true, but to me, I feel like breaking into the building and breaking the windows and then trashing it. They didn't completely trash it. They didn't break any computers, but there were tables and chairs and things thrown all over the place. And the NYPD said, and I'm going to say that the way New York handles things sometimes is very boss-like, but I'm just going to say that the NYPD said that when they were trying to climb in through that window, they had what is it? Vending machines and all types of things like blocking them that they had to get through while people were also throwing things at them, right? That's what the NYPD says. And the NYPD that was speaking at this conference, half of them were black and Hispanic, okay? So they were a mixed group. And to me, I don't feel like they were lying, okay? And they were also going back and forth between City College and Columbia. So for those of you who don't know New York, you don't know Harlem, because both of them are in Harlem. A lot of people don't know Columbia University is in the heart of Harlem. But City College, that's Colin Powell's alma mater, is 20 blocks away from Columbia, okay? On Amsterdam Avenue. You go 20 blocks from 116th to 137th, that's where City College is at. And City College is walking distance from where I live in Harlem. The NYPD were going back, dealing with both campuses at once, okay? So now, when I was talking to my mom, I said, well, because I really wanted to know her opinion on their strategies, because my mom is excellent at that, okay? And like I said, she hadn't been paying, like I didn't realize that these protests have been going on since October, okay? I'm thinking we're just now seeing this in the news. I've been by Columbia's campus, come and think of it, because when I'm in New York, like there are stores that I go to over there, and I go print my stuff out over there. So I've been around Columbia's campus. I haven't seen any protests, but apparently they're saying that these protests have started in October. My mom wasn't aware of that either, okay? And she's not always on the campus. She works from home a lot, but she goes to the campus. So she's been to the campus quite a few times since October, and so have I. I haven't seen that. But they said the protests have been happening since October. So I wanted to know, like, what do you think about, because the thing is that where the encampments were is where graduation takes place. Columbia University probably has the smallest damn campus of any major university, okay? Their campus is like super tiny, and then they have buildings spread out all throughout Harlem and Upper Manhattan. So it's like their campus is spread out through the whole upper part of Manhattan, Harlem, and Washington Heights with various buildings. Columbia University owns all of the real estate damn near Upper Manhattan. NYU owns damn near all the real estate in Lower Manhattan, and the church. My mom always said Columbia, NYU, and the church own most of the real estate in Manhattan. Okay, so Columbia has tons of money. That's a whole nother conversation. But let me just stick to the topic. Because I'm like, okay, I understand, like, I understand they're protesting, but I'm like, you need to move from where they're going to have graduation, because I know for me, I'm about to graduate, okay? My graduation is the day before Columbia's graduation, but I'm graduating from the University of Maryland in Baltimore, and I had seen the University of Maryland College Park on a list, but my mom told me she saw University of Maryland Baltimore on a list and I'm just like, that's fine, but I wouldn't want nobody to mess up my graduation. That's the whole point, okay? Like, I'm with you with everything, but you're not messing up my graduation. I worked too hard. So I felt like, they need to move from that area so graduation can happen, but can't you just take it someplace else? You don't have to stop, So, and I understand them wanting to be disruptive, okay? But I feel like my whole point is I feel like peaceful protests are important. But keeping it peaceful. Once you start to vandalize things, I'm never with, like, even with all the so-called Black Lives Matter, that's a whole other conversation. All of that, it wasn't even just Black Lives Matter. Let me just say protests that have happened in America because of the police. Like, I remember the Freddie Gray situation in Baltimore. And you had people ransacking Baltimore, as if Baltimore's not already a piece of shit. I'm sorry. Like, Baltimore has great food, but that city is really shitty. And no offense to the Baltimore people. I know people love their city. Yeah, got a few blocks of niceness, but Baltimore's pretty fucked up, okay? So you want to destroy, and they ended up burning down low-income housing for senior citizens that was about to open. Like, I'm not with that. That to me is just stupid, okay? It's self-destructive, it's not productive, and it won't get you anything. So I'm never with that, okay? And the whole thing with negotiation, and it was a point my mother made with her union work. You don't want to, when you're trying to negotiate with somebody, you don't want to aggravate them so much that they're not even willing to talk to you, right? But I'm just going to say that, yes, the protests are spread all over the country, but it started in New York. It started at Columbia. Columbia has a long history of protests, okay? A long history of it. Now, I talked to my aunt, you know, my dad's sister, who I think is very wise. And she said that she just, because she remembers when she was in college and they were protesting the Vietnam War. And my aunt talked about how they were drafting people, okay? They were snatching college students, okay? She said first they came for the D students, then they came for the C students, then they're coming for then they're sending them back all broken up, missing limbs. And you know, my aunt's partner, who I knew my entire life, he passed away last year. He was a Vietnam vet, and all kinds of crazy things happened to him. I remember hearing it as a kid, like metal plates in his brain and straddle or whatever that stuff is. I mean, all kinds of stuff, like totally fucked up from that. And, you know, people would be like permanently damaged. And so she said, well, they were seeing that. And they were like, oh, hell no, we have to stop this, right? But my aunt talked about whatever college she was at, how, you know, they kept it peaceful, it was important. But then people started to get violent and throwing things at the cops, and some people got shot. And she just didn't feel like it was smart to be throwing things at people with guns or to be trying to aggravate, you know. And so I agree with that. I don't feel like that ever goes anywhere. But these peaceful protests, because I see like in Northwestern, they were having protests. They said that they reached an agreement at Northwestern. They said that at Brown. But when I looked more into what the agreement was, it's really, first of all, Northwestern is promising to give 5 scholarships to Palestinian students, which I'm not with that. Because I'm like, how many scholarships are you giving to black students? I feel like American universities value the fuck out of foreign students. Because please tell me, what country can Americans run to? Some of us live in war zones and all types of shit. What country can we run to and get top jobs and get a free ride at a university? What country? Am I missing something? Because I want to know. Because I know I have struggled to pay for my degrees, okay? Nobody's giving me a scholarship. And I have family members that fought in every war in this country. So I'm not with giving no free rides to, oh, we want to give scholarships to Palestinian students and we're going to give certain amount of faculty positions to Palestinians and da-da-da. I'm just trying to understand. But yet, didn't they just get rid of affirmative action? And didn't they just, you know, I want to know, do they have something like, is Northwestern making an effort to give scholarships to some black American students? Not some Africans, some black Americans. Are they doing that? Not Caribbeans, black Americans. Are they saying, are they making a concerted effort to hire black American professors? That's what I want to know. So I'm not with that, okay? Because you know, the whole thing that these students were supposedly protesting about is divestment. So there's that. But I think that if even more schools got involved, because already there's schools in every corner of the country, okay? You got it going on in Wisconsin, you got it going on in, I think, Utah, the West Coast, the East Coast, and Texas, and Louisiana, and North Carolina, Indiana, of all places, Ohio. It seems like it's happening damn near everywhere, right? But I feel like if it grew, right, and it was like literally every school damn near, like if you think NYU, Columbia University, and City College, they're all in the island of Manhattan, the borough of Manhattan. I know you guys know, some of you know that New York City has 5 boroughs. If all the schools in all 5 boroughs were doing that, if you had Queens College and Brooklyn College and LIU and whatever other, Hunter, I don't know, whatever other schools that are in New York, and then you had the schools in New Jersey, and you had all the schools in Connecticut, and you had all the schools, you know, Chicago got the University of Chicago, got DePaul, got Northwestern, got Loyola, you know, University of Illinois. If you had like, if it was like practically every school, I feel like that would be so, I feel like that would be a good tactic. I feel like that would be so, because there's strength in numbers. If I've learned anything from the work of my mom and watching her organize, there's strength in numbers. But it's extremely difficult to organize people as a group, to be cohesive, to do stuff like that. And that's why I respect organizers. That's why I respect organizers, right? Because people don't know how hard that work is. And that's why I respected Obama for coming to a city, Chicago, that wasn't his city. And you're deciding to organize and be in the hood in the South Side, in an area that I wouldn't be walking around over there in the wild hundreds. You know, and it's like, it's easy for people to talk about how nothing has changed, you know, nothing has changed. I promise you, everybody that says that has done nothing and has come from a family of do-nothing people, okay? I rarely meet people my dad's age who are involved in the movement. I rarely meet people that have been involved in any movement or any type of organizing. So it's easy to sit back and say nothing has changed when you're doing nothing. Me being involved, I'm about to graduate with a master's in medical cannabis science and therapeutics, and it took 100 years, okay? From 1840 to 1920, cannabis was a part of the U.S. pharmacopoeia. Okay, it was prescribed for over 50% of medical conditions. In 1860, there was like when slavery was still here, there was a whole conference on cannabis medicine with doctors and scientists. So it's a known thing, okay, that cannabis is potent medicine. Cannabis became illegal in around 1920 because of propaganda, racist propaganda. And it took 100 years for us to get back to, and even we're not even back to where it was 100 years ago, where it was completely legal, because it's not. But some of you might have seen that now the DEA is supposed to be rescheduling cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. That is 100 years of work. People being involved in politics. Scientists trying to do research. When it's hard to even research cannabis because it's federally illegal. So you had 100 years of this, okay? And now it's just starting to flip. And that is 100 years of people putting in the work. So when you have young people now, when I say young, again, I mean people 60 and under, who are like, oh, or maybe I'm talking about 50 and under now, I don't know, right? Who will just be like, they think that because something hasn't changed in 5 years, something hasn't changed in 10 years, that nothing has, nothing is changing. What's the point? What's the point of being involved in politics? That's lazy talk. Even if we see right now how abortion is becoming illegal, right, in a lot of places. I have never had an abortion, thankfully, but I've always been a part of the pro-choice movement ever since I was in the 4th grade. The very first time I went on the radio, I was in the 4th grade. I didn't get the tape from my dad, but my dad had a radio show in New York. And in the 4th grade, I was on there talking about women's reproductive rights, okay, and the animal rights people. How I wanted to take the animal rights people and put them in Yankee Stadium with a bunch of lions and see if the lions felt the same way about them. I remember saying that on the radio. And then in high school, I worked for an organization called NARAL New York, which is the National Abortion Rights Action League, and I was a peer educator. So I went around New York City with a group of my peers, went around New York City and talked to my peers, other teenagers, about women's reproductive rights, grassroots advocacy, and sexuality, right? And back then, we realized that we were lucky in New York City when it came to abortion, okay? When I was in high school, all my friends had abortions, okay? And their parents didn't know. Teenage pregnancy was not a cool thing. I didn't know any teenage mothers, okay? In New York, people was not having no baby. I'm not going to say there's no teenage mothers, but I'm going to say in my schools that I went to, and what was the norm in my life growing up in New York City, I don't know any teenage mothers. But I knew girls that got pregnant in high school. They just got abortions. In New York, it was very easy to get an abortion without your parents ever knowing because of how the laws were and the access. And that's the thing about New York City. You have access to everything. But in a lot of small towns in America, where everybody knows you, it was like, and you need someone to drive you. Like in New York, you could just get on the train. You didn't. But you live in a small town, you need somebody to drive you. Everybody knows you. There's no way you could be discreet about it. There were some states where, you needed both parents' permission. Or maybe, you live next to the border of another state. And your aunt drives you across state lines to get an abortion in another state, that was considered a felony, okay? And so I was very much aware of these laws in high school, and that's why, like, very much aware of the importance of grassroots advocacy. And talking to my peers in New York City, like, you don't know how lucky you are. You don't think about it, because this is normal to you. We can go get on the train, go to the abortion clinic, get an abortion, don't tell your parents, which I think is good, because there are young girls who are pregnant because their dad raped them or their stepdad raped them. There are young girls who are pregnant who their family doesn't want them to have an abortion because their family is religious. I had an ex like that. His mother had him at 16, but she didn't want him at all. And because the parents were religious, they made her have him. And his mother treated him like she didn't love him. She treated him terrible, and he had serious problems. Like, let me tell you, if you're born from a mom that didn't love you when she was pregnant with you, you're going to be forever screwed up. That's a forever screwed up child. So that's another problem with trying to force women to have babies. It's like, you shouldn't force a woman to have a baby that doesn't want the baby. Like, it's not good for society, okay? Because that person is going to be a problem for society a lot of times, okay? So anyhow, I'm just going to say that then I saw somebody on Columbia's campus. He looked black. Like, he might have been black and Jewish, because he just wasn't white. I'm not going to say he doesn't have white blood, but just his phenotype, he just wasn't white. He might have been a little bit lighter than me. And he's the head of the Jewish, some Jews for Peace organization on Columbia University's campus. And he was speaking about all of the Jews that actually have been arrested at pro-Palestine demonstrations. So again, I'm just saying this to say, when they make it seem like it's everybody against the Jews, or that even the whole anti-Semitic thing, because I'm sorry, like, luckily, people never talk about the beneficial parts of social media, but on social media, yeah, we have restrictions, but we don't have the restrictions that people in the media have, but they really can't say this, and they really can't say that. Right now, social media is a better news reporting tool than the actual media is, okay? People on social media have realer conversations. They're having time to dig into things the way the media can't, okay? And I heard that at Columbia, the other night, they were arresting all the journalism students, okay? Because there were Columbia journalism students who were present. And I haven't talked to my twin brother, because again, I've been trying to focus on my own work, but my twin brother is a graduate of Columbia journalism, okay? And he's in New York, and I was wondering, like, had he gone by there, or, you know, it's a great time for a journalism student. But he was talking about, there was tons of Jewish students who were involved. And then, you know, you had the Jews in Brooklyn. I don't know the different types of Jews, because there's different types. But the ones in Brooklyn with the furry hats, they were standing out in front of Columbia with Palestinian flags. And then they were arguing with other Jews who didn't even look religious about it. But anyhow, I'm on Instagram, and this video cuts off in an hour. So I've been talking for almost an hour. It's about to end at a minute, in about a minute. So I'm going to end this conversation, and I need to go back to my own schoolwork so I can graduate and stay focused. But I will probably do a follow-up to this as more stuff comes out and more stuff unfolds. So I will come back to this conversation. If you learned something from this, please like it, please share it. Leave your comments. I don't think that students standing up for Palestine is anti-Semitic. I haven't seen anybody saying anything anti-Semitic. If that is actually happening, then, like, if people are really threatening them, then that's wrong. But I haven't seen evidence of that. And so I just like to, you know, I like to deal with the facts. And it seems like there's issues on both sides. But all in all, I think that what these students are doing, what they're doing is important. And most people, I respect people who organize and do this kind of stuff. And most people don't have the temperament for it. So I'm going to end with that, and I will talk to you guys later. Please leave your 2 cents. And I will see you later. I'm going to go back to the books. Bye, people.